Good afternoon, everyone. At least it's afternoon on the East Coast of the United States. I'm just having a little back and forth with David. Let's see if we can get him on here via Skype. We might just miss his call. A little problem. David, stay with me. I apologize, everyone. There's so many moving parts to this system. And anytime a technical issue comes up, it's something else to deal with. So David and I were just on the phone, and there are certain problems with Skype. Everyone always has an issue with Skype, so we've been using some other resources to connect via video. And we're just having a little issue there. So today we're going to be talking again about the all red line, which is something that David has just introduced us to last week. And this is a series of cables, undersea cables, that have been used to connect the British Empire around the world, going as far back, I think David said, as 1858, which is quite amazing. Let's see if we can get David to come in on that link that I've sent him. I know it's a little tricky sometimes for him. I hope he will. There we go. Here he is. Okay. So happy to have you joining us, David. I apologize. There was a technical problem with Appear In, and I could not get it to start, so I had to create this new link. Can you hear me, David? But I am not hearing you, unfortunately. Can you hear us, David?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. We've got you there. Sorry about that, David. It's such a complicated array of interconnected systems that, one thing gets thrown off and it becomes total disarray that often takes more time than we're allotted to correct. But I'm delighted to have you with me. I apologize. I know the technical issues are challenging to deal with, and we're going to be talking today, of course, about some of the most impressive technology I've ever heard about, the all red line, which of course you introduced me to for the first time ever just last week. If I'm remembering what you told me correctly, this is a network of undersea cables that have existed for, what was it, 1858 that they were first laid?
Yes, the first one was laid between Ireland and Newfoundland.
And that's quite a technological achievement for 1858, isn't it?
Oh, it's staggering. And if you look at the Great Eastern and what it opened up in terms of, from the British Empire point of view, trading opportunities, serious money-making opportunities, and that's okay. The potential to do great good, and in many cases it did great good, but in other cases, of course, it's a very effective tool for man-in-the-middle attacks on sovereign states and basically causing havoc. And there are people inside the United Kingdom and the Foreign Office that are very practiced at that, so people should be nervous. And that technology, it hasn't gone away, but you've done, yes, but you basically got the world, or we have the world, hooked up with the all red line. And then in 1988, something very interesting was introduced, financed by N.M. Rothschild and Sons, and that was the first fiber optic link underwater, under Atlantic, and that was called TAT-8. That is, I think, the transatlantic telephone line, number 8. And of course, subsequently, and incidentally, pulse code modulation and fiber optic was invented by this extraordinary outfit called STC, Standard Telephone and Cables, that was late 19th century. Some absolutely brilliant people, and I compare these two, I forget the names, I think Reeves was one, had between them 130 patents related to pulse code modulation, fiber optics, etc., etc. And so STC ran through to 1991, when it was bought by the Canadian company Nortel, which you may or may not know was pumped up to $120 a share and then dumped by the forces in the shadows. And that would have allowed Nortel I believe, to deliver fiber optics to the World Trade Center for the 9/11 attack with the man in the middle assault. Over to you.
Right. Now, there's a number of other intriguing, oops, sorry there, David. There's a number of other intriguing images that you've brought to our attention. David, I'm sorry. You know, it's so, there's so much stuff going on here that when it doesn't go properly, it is quite a challenge to get untangled. Now, why am I not able to have you there?
I might just add that, just think that we have a problem managing the truth, but just think how big a problem they have handling their lies.
Exactly. I'm just having a problem managing the different screens that I've got connected to the computer. So you've shared a number of images with me today, including one from the bridge between, it's interesting how we're always talking about bridges, the bridge between the World Trade Center complex and the Winter Garden, which perhaps people who aren't from New York, they may not be immediately familiar with this, but this was the QuebecNewYork.com. Well, I guess
yes, that's an excellent image, right? That is in the high points of the 9/11 attack. And this outfit, QuebecNewYork.com, was organizing a arts and musical event. The French would call it, I think, a son et lumière, which is sound and light. And I've been to a couple in France where I lived there, and they take an old chateau and a historical chateau, and they floodlight it with changing colors, and they turn on the lights in various rooms, and then actors playing historical characters go from one room to another. It's actually riveting on a nice summer's day with a glass of wine. But I think the motive for these people is far more sinister. And now you told me that I keep trying to think of the name of the dance hall. It's a very old established dance hall in New York. I'm sorry?
Rose Ballroom?
Okay, Rose Ballroom. It's quite a history to that. I think it seats about 3,500 people. So maybe you and I can do a presentation.
Roseland Ballroom, I think it's called.
Roseland Ballroom, okay. So on the 21st of September of 2001, this outfit from Quebec, New York, was supposed or scheduled a showing of a film or a live theater action group called Zulu Time. Now, I'm a techie guy, right? So I despise what I think are self-conscious, patronizing elitists who put on these bizarre shows to, I don't know, transmit just how smart they are. But Zulu Time is very interesting because Zulu Time is the time given to UTC, and on 911, the most accurate timing signals to blow up the Twin Towers and building number 7 were coming from a cesium fountain clock in the custody of the British company SERCO at the National Physical Laboratory. And those timing signals would have been transmitted over the Federal Bridge. But I'll come to that in a minute. So if you look at Zulu Time by some guy, I choose to forget his name, but he's a Quebec-based writer and promoter of these kind of bizarre shows. And it's about a terrorism event, you know, where people hang upside down and do weird sort of semi-sexual gyrations. And basically it just seems to convey to me disrespect for the people who work in air traffic control and baggage screening, who have a job to do. And on 911, of course, they failed right across the continent. Now, why did
Robert LePage is the Canadian theater mastermind who created this thing.
Yeah, yeah. So you can see a YouTube of an excerpt from Zulu Time. And I tell you what, it's kind of weird, right? But in the context of what happened in New York on 911, you know this phrase, 911, particularly in the area of the North Tower, was the first live broadcast mass snuff film in human history. I think these guys at QuebecNewYork.com staged it. Because the nice thing about that is, you see, when you put on like Amalgam Virgo in the 1st and 2nd of June, which is an exercise, right? You've got your actors, you've got your script writers, you've got your improv people, you've got an audience, and it only requires some badly programmed artificial intelligence where it'll go rogue on you. That is to say, if you program artificial intelligence, expert system, and fuzzy logic algorithms to reward prisoners for neutralizing someone's carbon footprint, well, those prisoners will get paid if they go out and kill someone. Right? So what's really weird is over the bridge, you've got 10 days before the action was supposed to show up at that theater, you've got this banner, www.quebecnewyork.com, which means to say there was a group of actors, filmmakers, camera crews, right, down in New York 10 days before it was going to put on. So I ask you, Jason, why wouldn't the camera crew include the No Day brothers?
It could. People have pointed out that there's some sort of anagram in the name No Day Brothers, right?
Yeah, I did, because it's an anagram of Duane Street.
Right.
And they were following the ladder company from Duane Street, ostensibly because they were trying to track a probationer and his training. Mm-hmm. The Duane Street ladder company got a call that there was a gas leak. I forget the name of the road. So off they go to the check the gas leak. There's a picture. It's either Gilles or Gideon No Day takes a picture of a member of the fire department of New York with a gas detector over a grill. Then there's a noise of a plane overhead, and you, an expert in this kind of stuff, and then you can't actually see the plane. Gilles or Gideon moves the camera. I think they pan it, elevate it, and zoom in. And 1.25 seconds before the weapons platform, I don't choose to bother with what it is, appears from behind the AT&T building, the camera, if it had crosshairs, would be pointing exactly at the point of impact. Now, what are the odds of that happening, Jason?
I admit it is coincidental timing in which they point the camera up at the building there. We've got the video playing right now. It's amazing, David. All these things are always so coincidental. So you feel that they knew that this would be happening and that they were put here to give us this video. I mean, this does become part of the snuff film, right? The moment that plane hits, there are obviously people in the building who are dying.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone in the plane presumably would have been killed at the time of impact. And I don't know if you can freeze the frame, but what you'll find, a bright white flash as the weapons platform hits the north face of the North Tower. And that would be consistent with the proximity fuse, which was invented by the British in World War II. And the technology was transferred to the United States with the Tizard mission. And the first people to get a kick at the can with that very lucrative contract was RCA, Radio Corporation of America, which has had a wholly owned subsidiary in the United Kingdom called RCAGB 1929, which is now SERCO.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what is SERCO's relationship to this all red line?
Well, RCA would have had a major role in installing it, and that combination of telegraph and railways that sort of turbocharged the British Empire starting in the 1850s was funded by N.M. Rothschild. And N.M. Rothschild is the investment banker for SERCO, Kinetic, your president, Donald Trump, and Queen Elizabeth II.
Right.
Right. Then you have this character, Wilbur Ross, who congratulates himself with Trump on handling, well, they didn't handle it, they didn't have anything to do with it, right? They're celebrating the 10 millionth patent, but he doesn't choose to acknowledge the fact that you've asked him a question about SERCO running the patent office, and SERCO claims to have processed the 4 millionth patent. Well, 4 million out of 10 million is quite a chunk, particularly when you think that SERCO can now cherry pick the technologies in the patent office, clip them all together, it's called systems integration, and launch an attack, a man-in-the-middle attack on 911 that killed nearly 3,000 Americans. Now, yeah, just hold that frame there, and I'll go a little further with this. So one part of the key technology, I think it goes back to the 1960s, was what is known as the Defense Red Switch Network.
Right.
And right up to, I would say, 2009, you can see a picture of the IST-2 terminal on the Oval Office desk, right, with Barack Hussein Obama, probably should be better known as Barry Sfotoro, right, and he's got his long, lean figure holding the IST2 terminal to his head. And you can see the 4 red buttons on the IST terminal, and it is FO, O, immediate, and priority. FO is flash override. Very important facility, theoretically available to the United States President, the Commander-in-Chief, where if he pushes it, what should happen, yeah, there you go, right? So that's, I think that photograph's around 2009. And then someone, maybe Valerie Jarrett or Michelle Obama or a British agent, removes the IST2 terminal from the presidential desk. And in my opinion, my candid, arrogant, if you will, opinion, is they have bypassed the President of the United States. The President of the United States now has a terminal that is not secure, right? And is probably driven by fiber optics, meaning that they can listen to everything that Trump is about to say before he's even thought it.
That seems crazy that they could just change the phone in the White House without a lot of people knowing about it.
Well, a lot of people do know about it, but they're probably on the wrong side, or they're incompetent, or they've got the wrong agenda. Remember, I keep saying that the United States was going to be decapitated on 9/11, and had that 4th plane left on time, it would have taken out the Capitol building and killed 535 or 538 congressmen and senators. And I can't understand why Americans don't see that. What do they think? You know, my rather facetious comment about this guy in a cave in Afghanistan straddling a yak. How can you bring the most powerful nation to its knees with that kind of talent at his disposal? And he could barely find a pilot to fly a plane.
Well, there are other factors, of course, that make it totally implausible that the plane was flown by anyone. You know, David, this Quebec, New York, it's an interesting thing. The website is gone, but when I go to the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine, as it were, which itself has recently come under fire, I understand that archive.it is no longer safe. There are some other versions of this that they've recommended that you use. It seems whoever it is that wants to scrub information from the internet is aware that people can use this, so they're trying to scrub it from here as well. Let's go back to 2001, where this page has been archived by...
I did visit this, you see, and it's very interesting. It had the words of a poem by that famous English poet about towers falling down.
Really?
And then it disappeared, and I didn't have the technology to find out where it had gone. Maybe you'll be able to find it.
Well, this looks like it. We've found a version of the page that seems to have existed on September 20th, 2001. So it's Quebec, New York, Le Premier Ministry Bernard Landry.
I can translate that if you like.
All right, sure.
Premier Bernard Landry has announced that the Quebec, New York 2001 event is reported delayed due to information.
I guess September 11th.
Yeah, yeah.
Because this is from September 20th, 2001.
Okay, so it was postponed because it was due to start on the 21st. Now, if you go back before that, you might find a poem.
Is there a way to put it into English? Here we go. So this is our real-time discovery process, David, and we're...
Yeah, exactly, and isn't it fascinating? Because, I mean, how many people can bring this to an audience?
This says Quebec Government Portal, so I don't know if this is Quebec, New York. So now it's linked us to quebec.gov, so I might have hit the wrong link. Let's go back a bit here. Interesting. Yeah, that took me to Quebec. So Quebec, New York. So you'd like to go back before September 11th? Is that the idea?
Well, I don't want to waste too much time, but there used to be a poem by John Milton that talks about towers collapsing and falling down. And I probably last visited that site about 10, 12 years ago. Right? So I was never able to find where it went.
Yeah, it's been erased, or maybe they're out of business. I mean, certainly it's 18 years.
This is 1984, right? Ministry of Truth.
Right. So it says the new version of CIAC's electronic magazine is online. I mean, this is very confusing. What is all this CAIC, Quebec, New York? What's the point of this whole Quebec, New York? Culture, technology, youth?
Well, it's one of these, I'm just being sarcastic, pretentious events where people put on shows with a kind of covert message that they're too scared to come out in plain English. But, you know, if they're putting on a show on the 21st of September in 2001 in front of an audience of 3,500 people, and it talks about terrorism and a kind of dystopia in an airport, well, what's the connection between 911? I think the people who wrote the script for Zulu time wrote the script for the attack of 911. And Quebec is not your friend, Jason. It's a bit like I say Illinois is not your friend. Illinois is the most corrupt state in the Union. 4 of its last governors have been in jail for racketeering, and you've got, was it Rahm Emanuel? Sorry.
Right.
Let me just,
Rahm Emanuel.
I put that somewhere, just hold on.
Sure. Rahm Emanuel, of course, is Barack Obama's buddy, who's the mayor of Chicago. Now, it's strange how, okay, you're back, David.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So it's strange how difficult it is to find information about this Quebec, New York. I've gone back to the first archived page prior to September 11th, 2001, which takes us all the way back to April 5th. And it's not really showing us much of anything. These archives.
Anyway, in a nutshell, there's a group of actors, improv actors, script writers, special effects people who've come down to New York to put on a show on the 21st. And for some reason they decide, let's say the most innocent one is they just wanted to do a bit of marketing. They strapped that banner on the side of the pedestrian walkway between the Winter Gardens and the World Trade Center. Now, what I'm saying is it's a hypothesis, and because they've destroyed so much evidence, which technically is a felony, I'm asserting I'm entitled to an aggressive inference of guilt. Now, right. I worked a lot with explosives when I had in the oil industry, and if you're relying on wireless ignition or detonation of an incendiary or an explosive, right, it's very liable. Oops.
This is sort of a man-in-the-middle attack there, David.
Right. Just, I'll be able to get back to all these people. Yeah, it's not safe, in my opinion, to detonate explosives or ignite incendiaries, and that's the correct term. You ignite incendiaries and you detonate explosives by wireless in a busy area, because you never know that you're going to get stray signals or someone's going to hack you, right? And you set off the explosives and you get blown up yourself. However, if you can run a fiber optic link, and remember, Nortel bought STC, so it would have had access to all of its patented technologies. You could run fiber optics along that pedestrian walkway, right, into the World Trade Complex, into the elevator shafts of the Twin Towers and building number 7, and tie the ends to igniter electronics if you want to use incendiaries, or detonators if you want to use explosives. And then you have a bird's eye view using the fiber optic links, which are global, including the stuff they've got at Diego Garcia, which is a British Indian Ocean territory, which has British police and a huge American base. And it's like an aircraft carrier on the rocks, so to speak, with about 2,000-mile moat around it, okay? Which is probably, to all intents and purposes, impregnable. But now it's a great opportunity, for example, for Christine Marcy, Fields McConnell's sister, to provide her a Con Air service for rendition. So right. You fly a few people that you maybe want to torture to death, or maybe some people that you might want to convert to your way of thinking, like the Freescale semiconductor people on MH Flight 370. There were 20 of them, right? And it comes back to this bizarre thing where you put a whole bunch of high-value people in the same plane, right? And then you kill them all. So why would Freescale, I mean, when I worked for an international company, we would never allow more than 2 or 3 at the most high-value engineers to travel on the same plane for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Right? Remember the Polish government in that cat in forest thing? Or the entire Polish government was nearly wiped out.
Oh, right. I do remember that.
And then in, I think, 1994, a helicopter carrying all of the top British IRA intelligence people crashed, killing them all. These aren't coincidences, Jason, right? These are targeted attacks. And it wasn't, you see, I think a lot of people have been duped into thinking it was a generalized attack on the North Tower and the South Tower and building number 7. I beg to differ. I think it was a targeted attack where they identified a number of high-profile firms in the insurance industry, such as Marsh McLennan, Aon Corp at the top of the South Tower, and the Risk Waters Group that had a breakfast meeting in the Windows of the World restaurant where Chris Hyman was, the chief CEO of SERCO, right? So probably about 800 top people in the insurance industry were murdered on 911. One of my goals is, as you know, is to address each one of the companies where there's been a body count over 50 and say to the families of those people, look, justice has not been done to the people that have died on 911. Please get yourself organized, listen to the Jason Goodman show with David Hawkins, and understand how a class action, whether it's a class action suit or some derivative of that, is perhaps not so important, you can put together an action in the court of public opinion for wrongful death involving the negligent, reckless, willful, or fraudulent use of patented devices, like the patented devices behind the fiber optic links. See? So if, for example, there's a balance of probability argument that the ignition or detonation signals were transmitted on fiber optic links running through that pedestrian, you have the injured communities, have a remedy, which is a wrongful death. And let's say you take the 343 firefighters, how many billions of dollars would that represent in a class action lawsuit?
Many. Now, David, I must apologize in advance for my frequent, what would probably be described as attention deficit disorder, but it's just been brought to my limited attention by Thomas Tyson, who's a regular viewer of ours, that there's just been some breaking news in a case that you and I discuss rather frequently. The Boulder police apparently are showing very little interest in the confession of a man who claims, a pedophile, he claims to have killed JonBenet Ramsey. A published report stating that a convicted pedophile had confessed to a high school friend that he killed JonBenet Ramsey elicited a dismissive response Thursday from Boulder's police, who noted that he had done so before. The Daily Mail reported that Gary Oliva had confessed in letters written to a former high school classmate, Ventura, California resident Michael Vale, that he killed JonBenet, but that it was an accident. How could it be an accident?
Yeah, right. Well, you know, whether that's even worth investigating, I mean, you know, the 3-page ransom note, I would suggest, written by a very educated person that uses, for example, attaché instead of the word briefcase, and talks about 118,000. I mean, what self-respecting kidnapper is going to ask for 118,000? I mean, take them too long to count, right?
Well, it just seems so specific, and they had all those, you know, there was a whole breakdown of bill denominations that they wanted, and I agree with you that there's reason to certainly be suspicious of that, but it's curious to note that just in the last, you know, 12 hours, there's been quite a lot of mainstream reporting here. We've got Fox News talking about this. I wonder, you know, when you and I start to talk about cases like this, or other guests who come on Crowdsource the Truth, bring up topics that then get reporting in the mainstream news, I can't help but think, how easy would it be to elicit something like this? Let's say this is a story intended to get people to not pay attention to what you and I are saying. Perhaps something like this is itself a man-in-the-middle attack on our show.
And SERCO has a contract with the UK Cabinet Office at a place in England called Hawkins, and they will stage and they will borrow the client's communication system, which will be the UK government, and they will stage a dummy attack inside the government communication system and use script writers and experienced TV anchor people to add realism. Now, that's just one hair's breadth away from going rogue, right? So, for example, the London Underground bombing, the bombs went off at exactly the same places as was intended in the exercise, right? And they had the people carrying the explosives. A lot of people said that the floor of the London Underground carriages was pushed up, which suggests actually the explosives were underneath the floor. When the bodies and body bits and so on were taken out to the Honourable Artillery Company's grounds on the edge of the city, the day before, a company called Agrico that was run by Rupert Soames had got a contract to deliver a morgue and the power supply. So Rupert Soames, and apparently all that technology went off to New Orleans before the Hurricane Katrina, but not one autopsy was done on the bodies, Jason. In 911, not one autopsy in any of the casualties, as far as I'm aware, was ever done. Now, that scene outside the Pentagon, where the guys are picking up the small bits of evidence,
yeah,
it's a crime site. Where is the yellow tape, right, that would prevent anyone from crossing without proper authority? Those guys on the morning of 911, I believe they were flown in on the understanding that they would participate in an exercise and their job would be clean up after the exercise. I think they were checked into the Pentagon, the Sheraton Pentagon City Hotel, and they were on standby outside the Pentagon before the weapons platform, I'll call it that again, hit the Pentagon.
Right.
So they've got this very sophisticated phasing of the crime scene that leaves the public sucking air, if that's the right term, which I call script, spot, shoot, snuff, spin, spoil. So they have the script writers. They write with sufficient room for improv actors, to do something, because a plan never survives first contact with the enemy. And then you have the spotting. Maybe spot comes before scripting. You have to identify the target. So, for example, on 911 at the Pentagon, the key high-value target would have been Captain Gerald DeConto, the duty officer, and around him a very capable, very honorable, I'm sure, 125 people working in the Pentagon's U.S. Navy Command Center. They were all obliterated.
Right.
Right. That means the connection between the President of the United States, George Bush, who's been carefully parked at some elementary school, so he was out of the loop. I mean, this is the ultimate man-in-the-middle attack. And then down in the Presidential Emergency Operating Center, you've got Condoleezza Rice and Lynn Cheney straddling, if that's the right term, rather scared-looking Dick Cheney.
David, something odd is happening. We normally have several hundred viewers to our show on YouTube, particularly on the main YouTube channel, which is the Jason Goodman channel, that's got about 78,000 subscribers, but we've got really a low number of viewers today, under 100, which I find surprising. I find it doubly surprising because on the less viewed channel, Crowdsource The Truth 2, we've actually got 137 viewers. I think that's the first time that's ever happened, that a broadcast I'm doing would have more viewers on Crowdsource The Truth 2 than it does on the main Crowdsource The Truth channel. And certainly we appreciate all of our viewers. Also want to thank our generous Patreon sponsors who might be watching on patreon.com/Crowdsource The Truth, but may also be watching on patreon.com/reverse CSI storyboards. That's David's Patreon page, of course. And in just about 10 minutes, David, we're going to close out this initial conversation and transition over to our Patreon-only show. So I wonder, there seems to be an issue with the graphic on the main Crowdsource the Truth channel. Perhaps that caused people to turn away. But to be sure, we will be back in just about 30 minutes on patreon.com/reverse-CSI storyboards and also patreon.com/crowdsource-the-truth. Every week, David and I are doing these exclusive live streams on Patreon, and it's a great way for us to get out some of this controversial information while avoiding some of the trolls. David, I wonder if this latest confession with regard to the John Benet Ramsey murder is at all influenced by anything that you and I have done.
Well, again, coming back to the limited hangout, what we have established, not just me, is that SERCO provides a pedophile tracking service to organized crime investigators in the United Kingdom. And it appears to have entered into a relationship with Oliver Buck Revell, who is the founder in Vancouver in BC of an outfit called Imagis Technologies. And Oliver Buck Revell is the guy who took his son and daughter-in-law off the tarmac before they got on to Pan Am 103, allegedly. So, well, what did he know and when did he know it? It looks for me like this deep organization that has access to the fiber optic links is able to do a man-in-the-middle attack on what the peasants are using, right? Including in that, without being derogatory, I think the firefighters in New York and the police, I believe over 60 people died in the police, New York Police Department. And I think it was because the communications had been jammed or hacked. But meanwhile, the people organizing the attempted overthrow of the United States government through the Federal Bridge had access to high bandwidth, real-time communications, fiber optics, synchronized by the cesium fountain clock in the custody of SERCO in the National Physical Laboratory in Teddington, where the clock was invented. Over to you.
Well, and of course, that cesium clock, I would only imagine, runs on Zulu time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, I don't say it is Zulu time, but you see, because it was the first, all subsequent clocks have ultimately, sooner or later, had to be synchronized to that clock. Now, it's very easy, apparently, to bump the strata in which a local community, so maybe all of the offices around where you're working, they're probably served by an intranet service provider, and the Brits can bump the strata so you can actually be incommunicado with respect to other intranets or even the master time source. So on 911, Washington went blind, deaf, and dumb, right? And it couldn't marshal its response to this attack, which was not out of a cave in Afghanistan. It was a hack into the most strategic technology that America has. So one of the big questions is, who was upgrading the Pentagon when this attack took place? One of the companies that was upgrading the Pentagon also got the job of taking the evidence away. That same company was upgrading the diesel systems in building number 7 in New York and also got the contract to taking the evidence away.
Who was that?
That company is AMEC, A-M-E-C, right? It has a wholly owned subsidiary called H.A. Simons in Vancouver, and H.A. Simons' office was above the Starnet Communications office, where there was a police raid that took away all of the files and computers and servers. Apparently it was like Space Wars in there, relating to child pornography, hardcore pornography, which probably involves snuff films, and online gaming. And I think Starnet Communications was actually using fiber optics around the world. Far harder to hack into. Over to you.
Now, is this the company here, David? AMEC?
Yes.
Foster Wheeler? What is Foster Wheeler? I've heard of that before.
That's, I think, a British engineering company.
AMEC Foster Wheeler to form a new global leader in the delivery of project engineering and technical services to energy and industrial markets. It's interesting, the consolidation of all these gigantic companies. So, David, we're almost out of time here on our YouTube program. I want to thank everyone who's tuned in on Crowdsource the Truth 2. Of course, Crowdsource the Truth 2 allows viewers to utilize Super Chat if they should be so inclined, but I would recommend that it's a better value for people to sponsor either patreon.com/reverse-CSI storyboards or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or both actually, and that's going to allow you to view our exclusive live streams. The next one, of course, is coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, both are live and available. That's a strange occurrence, David. There would be almost half as many viewers on the main Crowdsource the Truth channel as there are on Crowdsource the Truth 2. Very unusual. That's never happened before. We've got almost 79,000 subscribers on the Jason Goodman channel and just under 10,000 on Crowdsource the Truth 2. So I don't know what's causing that. But David, I'll see you over on patreon.com, and we're going to have to discuss how the All Red Line and Diego Garcia and all of these other factors come into play in the story that you're describing today.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason.
I'll see you there in just under 20 minutes, David.
Okay, bye now.
Thank you.